today for the fourth in our series of 4 policy webinars for HC Link. Today's webinar is called Taking a Bite Out of Healthy Eating and Active Living Policies, and we've got 4 fantastic speakers, all from the Ottawa region. And what we're really going to be doing today is walking through the experience of developing a policy from start to finish. And so in today's webinar, we're going to have some introductions and welcome, of course. We're going to hear a summary of the healthy eating and active living strategy and the results of the evaluation of the policy. And then we've got some fantastic presenters on the line who are going to share their experiences with us on implementing this policy. So we do have all participant lines muted so that we can get the best quality experience that we can with our sound. So throughout the webinar today, you can use the chat box to ask questions, make comments, post links to resources. We encourage you to do that. We will have time for questions at the end of the webinar. Feel free to post your questions anytime as they occur to you, and then at the end I'll go back through and look for questions for the speakers. So I'm really happy, as I mentioned, to have 4 great speakers with us today. We have Helen Parker, who's a public health nurse from Ottawa Public Health. And Helen has been at Ottawa Public Health for 14 years. She's done a lot of work in health promotion and outreach to families with young children, providing support and education in the home and also in community settings. We also have Ellen Lakuziak on the line, who is a registered dietitian with a T, and Ellen has been with Ottawa Public Health for 7 years, and she specializes in early years nutrition, and she's actually also published a book, which is exciting, called Eating Well When You're Pregnant, which was published in 1996. We also have Jeanette Perron on the line, who is a registered early childhood educator, and she's been doing that for 29 years. And she's been in community child care and a child care director for more than 20 of those years. She's been with the City of Ottawa as a child care specialist and program manager of the 12 municipal centers for the past 5 years. And last but certainly not least, we have Fadi Chouhebar, and he is the chef at Centre Éducatif Beau Soleil, and he's a chef, an entrepreneur, and an advocate of clean eating. And he believes that what he's doing right now is most impactful, since introducing the love and benefits of healthy eating to children at a young age will carry with them in the future. So we have a few questions for you, I think, and then we're going to dive into our content. Great. So we've got 3 poll questions you should see up on the screen. We just want to find out a little bit more about you. So you can just use the buttons on your screen to answer the questions. Oops. Sorry. Getting used to our new system here, so I'm just clicking buttons haphazardly. Exciting. Of course, everyone on the line motivating childcare providers to care about healthy and let the screen turn and hopefully.
So this is Ellen, and I'm going to start us off today, and Helen and I are going to go back and forth, and then we'll have Jeanette speaking, and Fadi will be flash at the end. So in 2012, Municipal Childcare approached us in Ottawa Public Health to develop guidelines for healthy eating and physical activity in their 11 centres. At first, Municipal Childcare and Public Health were working on these as if it was policy, but now, rather than being a policy, they are actually guidelines, but they are used as policy within the Municipal Childcare. And the reason why we've changed it from policy to guidelines is because the Ministry of Education develops and enforces policy in the child care environment, so it wasn't up to the municipality to develop the policy, but it is being implemented as if it is policy. In partnership with municipal childcare, we developed these objectives as part of these guidelines. First of all, that all children are provided with healthy food and a positive eating environment while in care. That all children while in care spend less time sitting and more time learning basic movement skills through play. That all children have a wide range of opportunities to be active while in care, and this includes adult-led activities and time for active free play indoors and out. And finally, that child care staff act as role models for healthy eating and physical activity. So our project design was built on 4 main areas. The first one being evidence. So what we started out with was a pretty comprehensive literature review and environmental scan to help us identify existing best practices or promising practices that had been done elsewhere. And this has been updated a few times since we started. And also to note that there was pretty limited evidence in the area of physical activity and physical literacy for children under 6 years of age. There was definitely more in the healthy eating area. We also, the big part of our project design was based on expertise. We started with advisory working groups for both healthy eating and physical activity, and we brought together the expertise of the municipal child care supervisors, books, and the early childhood educators, along with OPH staff, including a dietitian. And these groups met regularly for about the first year to develop the guidelines and to work together and to develop these guidelines together. And the municipal child care was very supportive of providing coverage for their staff to attend these meetings because this was extra time for them. And with the support from municipal child care, it allowed us to meet more regularly and to have that input from them. We were also able to consult with Dr. Christy Adamo at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario and staff at the City of Ottawa's Parks and Recreation Department. This source of expertise was a key element of the success of this project. It helped to clarify the goals and objectives, develop the training, clarify the terminology and language, identify the challenges and resources, and also it definitely facilitated the ownership of the project as well. Another important component of this phase was that municipal child care also paid for the OPH dietitian's time for 2 days a week for up to 18 months, which really meant that both sides were very committed to this project and to getting it done. The next phase was the evaluation component, and here we came up with a plan and a framework which outlined our goals, key evaluation questions, our methodology, and tools. The project was informed by a pilot in 4 of the Centers for Healthy Eating and 2 for Active Living. The pilot evaluation findings validated some of our tools and how we would implement the guidelines and the training in the remaining centers. And then following the pilot and the evaluation of the pilot, we implemented the guidelines in all 11 municipal child care centers in the fall of 2013. So what do our guidelines look like? They have standards of practice that impact on both the social and physical environment in promoting healthy behaviors in young children. On the healthy eating side, it involves 6 various areas. A large one is the environment, and this includes things like sharing family-style meals and snacks, role modeling, healthy eating behaviors, a positive attitude towards food, and positive mental health related to eating and body image. The next component was around menu planning and practical guidance for providing both menus and recipes, also recommendations for nutritious foods and beverages, serving sizes, and then finally healthy cooking techniques and food safety. In the active living side, again, we had a large component that referred to the environment, which included role modeling and active participation of the staff, making the most of their space and portable play equipment. It also meant the removal of screens and reducing the time the children spent in sedentary behaviors. Active play following the Canadian recommendations for physical activity was included, and providing recommendations for structured and unstructured physical activity and both moderate to vigorous physical activity. And finally, teaching fundamental movement skills, which was including the physical literacy component. So as part of our implementation and the pilot, we did do some training. And this training included, and resources were developed on the requirements of the guidelines and also on around the current knowledge and skills of the municipal staff. So for the healthy eating, we did in 10 centers with 10 supervisors and all their cooks and up to almost 100 early childhood educators. We did an informal training session with the OPH dietitian who reviewed the guidelines with them, the related resources, and answered any questions that the staff might have. And then the dietitian also met directly with each of the cooks for each of the centers. For the active living training, which was done with 9 supervisors and quite a few ECEs, as well as 4 home advisors, this was provided to each site through 2 sessions. Session 1 focused on the guidelines themselves and the related background information, and Session 2 was more hands-on and provided concrete strategies for promoting physical activity and physical literacy within the daily programming. The National Coaches Association Physical Literacy Training for ECE Champions was also provided, and this advanced training around physical literacy reached a total of 17 early childhood educators, and also included, that was done with some representatives from CHIO, from the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, and 1 Parks and Rec staff. And some Parks and Rec staff, I guess, and done in collaboration with them as well. And then finally, we held a cooks workshop earlier this year, and this was held for all the municipal cooks as well as for community-based cooks from childcare. And this was to provide support to the cooks in adjusting their recipes and menus and to learn more about Canada's food guide and serving sizes. So as part of our evaluation objectives, we wanted to focus on outcomes, and really because this was more of a feasibility study, that was our main goal. So we looked at the effectiveness of the training, looking at changes in staff attitudes and knowledge. We also assessed any environmental changes made by the staff to adopt the guidelines. We adapted the knapsack tool, which is a nutrition and physical activity self-assessment for childcare tool, to evaluate any pre- and post-environmental changes following the implementation of the guidelines. And this tool looked at a number of things, including any opportunities that they had for physical activity, what physical activities were provided, either unstructured or structured. It asked them to identify any sedentary behaviors. It looked at any changes in the eating environment, which included any division of responsibility issues as well as meal sharing. What types of foods and beverages were provided? Were the menus following the recommendations? And parent engagement. Were staff providing parents with information on nutrition and physical activity? And this knapsack tool was completed by the supervisor with the cook and with the ECEs. Over to Helen now.
Okay. Hi everyone. The evaluation tools, we used several different methods. We had a survey for pre and post implementation, a staff questionnaires to the attitudes and awareness and knowledge around healthy eating and physical activity. And after each training, we did have a client satisfaction survey to sort of, again, see what their knowledge and their confidence and intention to change their practice. We looked at reach data, and we had, again, the knapsack, the pre and post tool that we used. And then we had project logs, and this was more of an informal way of looking at what was changing in the centres. And so we have captured those, and those sort of the qualitative information that Jeanette will be addressing later on. We had a parent satisfaction survey, and this is a great opportunity that we had to add a few questions to the annual parent satisfaction survey that the municipal childcare send out. And in 2014, there was about 415 families who had children in childcare. And out of that survey, 205 parents responded, representing about 50% of the parent population. So this is a great opportunity to get their response to the guidelines, so we did add questions there. We have some outstanding evaluations that we are still working on, and that is we're looking at food cost comparisons, and we'll be looking at what changes there has been in the budgeting costs of the centres. We're looking at the parental complaints and serious occurrences, and this will be collected in December, and it really tracks changes in the complaints and discipline issues around that happen in the centres, and just seeing from year to year if there's any changes in that. And Ellen will be doing some cooks interviews to just follow up to see what their feedback on the changes they've had. So a lot of all this information was, we gathered a lot of information and we put it into fluid surveys. Qualitative data was reviewed and grouped into themes. Responses were combined for all lists to provide a group summary. Aggregated data ensured unbiased reporting and reduced the potential for negative repercussions for participating in sites. Some of the limitations of the evaluation, we were not able to do direct observation of changes before and after in the centres. We didn't have the resources to do that, and we really wanted to try and have some sense of what happened before and after, and we just because of our time constraints we couldn't actually do that in person. So we did use the self-assessment tool with knapsack that we adapted, and we found this was useful at the time to give that to the supervisors to fill out. But there was obviously there's bias in having a self-assessment. Usually people score themselves higher, so there's definitely that involved. And we also found that we weren't able to send this electronically, so that it was quite time consuming to put the data in afterwards for ourselves as well as for the supervisors to complete that. We didn't have a control group due to the small size and resources. We did not have a control group and to compare data against. We had a small sample size, so this meant that if one site was made a change, it really had a great effect on what we got back. So the effect rates were affected by the small sample size. Sometimes it was hard to get the evaluations completed. We had several difficulties there. That the municipal childcare was going through a lot of change, and so staff were moving around, supervisors were moving, so we sometimes had a hard time tracking people to get the completion done. And as I say, the time constraints of trying to get the knapsack tool done as well. Okay.
So when we did our cooks workshop, that was this past June, because we weren't able to get a lot of specific information out of the knapsack tool from the cooks, we really felt that it was important to do some face-to-face training with them in this half-day workshop. And as a result of that workshop, we really felt that this really helped them to get some more in-depth education around Canada's Food Guide and serving sizes, and also provided the cooks with an opportunity to give us feedback and ideas for new menus. From this training session, we learned that most of the cooks had a better understanding of the guidelines and Canada's Food Guide. They felt more confident to make appropriate menu and recipe adjustments when needed, and they were very glad to be able to share ideas with other childcare cooks. In fact, that was probably the best part of getting them all together, because they have very few opportunities to do that, and it was really nice for them to share their ideas. And some of the comments from the cooks at that workshop included, real food makes healthy kids, it's a good feeling to serve healthy food to children, and it can taste just as good from scratch. So they really bought into the guidelines, and it was very obvious from the training session that they really appreciated that extra support and education.
Okay, this is the active living, what we got back from the training. on active living guidelines, where this is where we went into the centres and we did the training in person at each site. And so 90% intended to incorporate the guidelines and 98% intended to incorporate activities to promote physical literacy and physical activity. What we found in that training with the ECEs was that they really enjoyed the ideas and the practical session that we did the most. They want to learn more and around physical activity, but they particularly liked the practical. They also liked the fact that we connected physical activity to learning, that they could incorporate activities that would, you could teach language skills as well as the child being active. You could teach them math and colors and all those kind of things that they're trying to teach children, that they could incorporate that as a kinetic learning for the children. It was also a good, what seemed to be working well was that we connected the focus of children being active and their ability to be ready to learn, that idea that they're more focused, alert for learning. The physical literacy training, this is the training that Kelly Bean at Parks and Rec provided, the National Coaches Association for Physical Literacy. We found that when we went to the centres, we had some very keen ECEs who were wanting more, and we wanted to really explore how we could get them trained in physical literacy because it was a new concept. So Kelly Bean led this group, and it was a really successful venture. We had 100% agreed that physical literacy champions training was useful, and they incorporated the training into the programming. And why we train these particular champions was that we are hoping that they will go into the centres and be available as experts in physical literacy to give support to their peers. And we hope to continue looking at how we can promote physical literacy in this way. Okay, back to Alan.
So where we saw the major changes, where we found the most change in the eating environment, I'm just going to tell you a few of the highlights. Certainly from the knapsack and also from our logs and some of our interactions with the staff, we really noticed that more of the centers were reporting their staff were always or often eating the same foods as the children, eating with the children all the time. There was a chance or a change in that behavior, which was really great to see. We also noticed a change in the division of responsibility. This was kind of a new concept for them in terms of the wording and the education around it, but they were already doing a lot of it before. But I think they just really figured out what to do in certain situations, and more of the centers did allow the children to decide which foods to eat out of the foods that were offered. So they were giving the children lots of more healthy options, but they were also allowing the children to decide, and that went up significantly. We found that healthy eating behaviors were reinforced, and that the toddlers specifically were guided and allowed to learn to feed themselves more readily. Definitely fruits and vegetables, the consumption of those went up because they were provided at every snack and every meal. So the children were getting servings from that food group at quite a significantly higher amount. Also, more of the centers were offering high fiber whole grain foods at least once per day. In terms of nutrition education, we found that more of the centers were integrating some nutrition information into their education plan, and they were including it in their classrooms and in their routines as part of their education at least once a week. So that went up quite significantly as well. And finally, what we did notice, which was great to hear, was that more centers were not hosting special events that included special foods that weren't part of the guidelines. So they were still having those special events with food, but they were including healthier foods. And also in terms of celebrations, which we can talk about a little later, and maybe Jeanette will mention that as well, that the focus came away from the birthday cake that the parent was bringing in, and it was something else was being provided to that child on their birthday. So that was quite significant as well.
So the environmental changes of the active living was that no screens in the centres, and this decision came that one of the guidelines is that they have no screens for children under 4, and this came out of the advisory group recommendation. They felt that computer screens and TV screens were distractions to the children being involved in active play, and they really wanted to have those removed. So definitely they have shifted from having screens from close to, there's 80% of the centres now do not use screens at all, and which is great. The daily physical activity recommendations of 120, in our guidelines, we recommend that they try and reach 180 minutes or support that 180 minutes per day. Obviously, when they go home, children, we're hoping, will be active and active at play at home with their parents. But if the centres were able to try and get as much physical activity throughout the day, that was great. So for toddlers, it's now it's definitely the children are more involved in active play indoors and outdoors, and preschoolers too. And we found that really the shift was that the teachers saw that they could schedule the physical activity into what they were already teaching. So if they were teaching language skills, circle time became a very active time. So that was, it wasn't onerous for them to incorporate physical activity into the day. Adult-led structured play. More centres report that educators offers 30 minutes or more of adult-led physical activity for toddlers and for preschoolers. Physical literacy. This was a new concept, but now sort of 92%, significantly more, 92% of post-implementation felt comfortable talking to parents about the importance of physical literacy and physical activity. So that helped us to see that they really were grasping the concept and comfortable with the concept of talking to parents around physical literacy. What we didn't see any change in was the play equipment. The centres had a lot of play equipment already there, but we probably will have seen a shift as to how they use it. I think Jeanette will bring a little bit of that to the table as to how they're actually using it. This was interesting, the parent engagement piece, that staff were more comfortable talking to parents around physical activity and nutrition. Parents show 97.6 satisfied or very satisfied with meals and snacks being served in the centres. 96% are satisfied or very satisfied about the physical activity, and 98.5 satisfied or very satisfied with the guidelines being followed at their centres. The other factor is that we did, when we added the questions to the annual parenting survey, an unsolicited response out of the 205 parent responders, 17 identified that healthy eating was the best thing that they noticed around childcare. So that's 20% of the responders noticed the healthy eating, and it was an unsolicited response. So I think this, the parent engagement piece indicated really for us that parents are the consumers of childcare, and they're obviously very concerned around healthy eating and physical activity, and this maybe is something that should be built upon and explored more, because I think it's definitely something that is important information for childcare to realize, to have. So when it's, as we have come to now look at the sustainability of this project, some of the challenges that we've really come to note and is helping us to direct those strategies is the challenge of wanting ongoing training. We found that the childcare were very keen and very excited about the project, and they want more. So how do we provide that ongoing education to ECEs and the cooks and supervisors? Another factor is that motivation is important. Some of the staff are saying, you know, it's hard to keep the motivation going. How do we do that? We want ideas. Resources. Each center is different as to what the resources they have available to themselves to use. We found some resistance to change in the sense that physical literacy was an adjustment. The use of the language, getting used to the concept of fundamental movement skills. But I think it's a normal part of the change theory that each person, individual, will be at a different level of change, implementing guidelines of policy. It's a process. So I think over time, where there is a little bit of a resistance to those kind of concepts, that over time, as people see results and have success, that will eventually change. That this is a voluntary program at this stage was another consideration as we move forward. So at this stage, the Ministry of Education has not taken this as policy, so there's not part of their licensing at this time, but it's still going to be a voluntary program. So some of our next steps address these challenges. So what we're currently doing is that we are developing a balance between having online training and in-person training. So we are developing a series of modules to help the centers or the community centers to implement the guidelines. So this will be an online training that's accessible to all childcare, and that's including supervisors, ECs, and cooks, so that everybody is on the same page, so that everything will be in the e-modules. This is being, we've been very fortunate with the e-modules that we've received funding to develop these from Reebok, and so we're hoping to incorporate some videos as well to demonstrate some activities as well. We are going to keep the train the trainer model. We're looking at exploring how we can provide, continue to provide physical literacy training, cooks training. Is there some training that we need for home providers and home advisors along those lines as well? We're looking at the networking, as I say, related to motivation seems to be a key. So where can we give networking opportunities? Through the trainings that we give in person, but also looking at social media as the way we can provide sort of sharing ideas, blogs, game ideas, that kind of thing, that we're hoping to explore that further. Acknowledgement. We have two ways of acknowledging the individual who completes the certificate. The e-modules will receive a certificate at the end of the training. But we're also trying to develop a criteria where a center may place acknowledgement, a HEAL acknowledgement, onto the central registry for childcare. That way then the consumer, the parents, will be able to see that this center has implemented the guidelines and that healthy eating and active living is happening in that center. The other piece is, obviously, as everybody around the table knows, that we need to advocate for policy change, legislation change. So we are working, we're very excited to hear other public health units are really, and other agencies are doing a lot of work in this area, and how we can work together on supporting that as well. So what have been the driving successes of this initiative? Number one has been our partnership with municipal childcare. It's been phenomenal. The passion, the motivation, their expertise has really given a lot of momentum to this. They also, I think, it seemed to be the ownership. They seem to have a very strong sense of ownership. And I think when they saw success it just gave more momentum to them wanting to do more. So I think that was key. Parents as a consumer, we've had phone calls from parents who are very interested in the guidelines and what the children are getting. So they're becoming much more aware, and I think that will be long-term driving force, I think, will come from parents. Political will, and this political will really comes at different levels. With political will, we really felt the powerhouses were the supervisors themselves in the centres. They made the decision as to what would be on the menus. They would make the decisions as to the program planning, and so we really wanted them involved in the training. And I think that had an important impact on the rest of the staff, knowing that their supervisors were trained. We had another political area is really the local area of influence. So our Board of Health was very supportive. We can see that in other municipalities that people are doing a lot of work, and I think it gains momentum to what you do, knowing that there's other agencies at work and collaborating in that area. And I think finally, the other area of influence is the provincial government. So they're now looking at the Day Nurseries Act here in Ontario. And I think we will be finding that they will be looking for feedback. And I think some of the things that are happening in that area will have an impact on what happens with our work as well. Because I think it really, to be politically aware of what their agenda is and where the direction will go, will really be the sustainability piece. It would be wonderful if this became part of the legislation that childcare were licensed. Part of the licensing would come from this. So that's something possibly in the future. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Jeanette and to Fatty, and we're going to listen and hear from them. Okay. Yeah, I'll change the slides. There we go.
Well, before I get started, I'd just like to thank Ellen and Helen for the great intro on how the guidelines came about from beginning to end. I do want to mention that without their expertise and them bringing on different resources, different partners, we really would not have seen the success that we have seen so far. So their expertise has really been what has ensured that so many children were able to benefit from these great guidelines. So the great part for me is to share with you some of the benefits. Obviously, it quickly came to mind that staff became more focused. The educators and the cooks had a focus of what we were requiring from them. It allowed them to be more uniform in the amount and even the type of physical activities or the types of menus and foods that they were offering. So obviously when you're in a municipality, you have many centers. It's great to see that there is uniformity in what's being offered to so many of the children. With the guidelines in place and more focused approach, it provided more opportunity for creativity. So this is where our staff really were able to shine. So giving them a focus on physical activity, it made them more aware of different activities, looking up different activities, working with the different resources that were offered, and this is where everybody was able to shine. Surprisingly to us, we had a noticeable behavior changes in the children, so fewer reportable, I'm going to say minor incidents or injuries, and that's probably because we were allowing the children to practice those skills a little bit better. So instead of protecting them and not allowing them to walk on a log, you know, we were actually encouraging it, and their skill level was increasing, so decreasing were the number of injuries. The parental response was quite strong, and this is probably due to the fact that we were sharing with parents what we were doing. So by the means of better communication, newsletters, tips and tricks for the parents. we saw a big response. Parents were asking questions. They were even asking for recipes, copies of recipes. They were sending us pictures of challenges that they were doing at home. So they quickly bought in, and we feel that that education piece went a long way. Sharing of ideas was very strong. Obviously, not only between educators or between cooks, but even between the parents and the staff. We felt that this was a really strong benefit that we saw. Again, we're always trying to find ways to engage parents, and this was really effortless. Parents actually came to us with great ideas and comments on how they were doing physical activity or trying out the recipes at home. As far as fewer trips to the store, that was something that that was noticeable from the very beginning. A lot of our cooks and even supervisors were spending a lot of time at the grocery store or picking up items. So by standardizing the menus and developing a standard ordering process online, it obviously kept the staff in the centers where their expertise was needed. For casual staff, this was probably the biggest benefit. We noticed especially the casual kitchen staff were able to come in and know exactly what was required on the menu, where the recipes were, what the quantities were. So instead of struggling and sort of ad-libbing on a daily basis if they were replacing, they had a very strong support mechanism in knowing what to cook and actually how to cook it, because a large part of the menus is how to prepare the food and not just what to be cooking. So how to increase the nutritional value that's going into the preparation of the meal. Our next slide. The barriers. Certainly our ordering process has been a little bit of a short-term barrier for us. Because we have standing offers at the city, we had to be ordering through, for instance, Cisco, and because there was minimum orders, it was getting a little bit difficult to order through them, but the benefits quickly outweighed this barrier, and we were able to work with the distributor on solutions on how to find nut-free foods, and they were very helpful and accommodating. So the training needs now, requests for ongoing training for both the physical activity and the nutrition. Some need more than others, and we noticed that the variation in skill level was quite obvious. So this was a bit of a barrier. We had to go back sometimes and do additional training. Obviously, with staff turnover, then you always have to go back and train those who have left. The perceived time commitment was a little bit of a barrier because some cooks thought that the new menus would take more time as there was general, we were moving away from processed prepackaged foods, and they were making a lot of things from scratch. This perception caused some initial hesitation and perhaps resistance in some centers, but we actually got the cooks on board by consulting them and asking them what would work best. And obviously, as Ellen mentioned, we used them in the consultation process as well. For the physical activity, there also was a perception that some of our staff may not have the skill level or fitness level or energy level for the activities, and that's why champions were trained and helped to encourage staff and to sort of multiply the enthusiasm. I can quickly say that this barrier was quickly changed into a success because staff have really risen to the occasion and increasing the fitness level and being a role model for children. The only other barrier was that one of our locations is catered instead of having a cook on site. So in this particular situation, we've had to work with the caterer and modify our guidelines slightly. But again, we're working really closely with the caterer into finding suitable solutions. So part of the environmental changes that we've seen, I think Helen spoke about no screens. So all of the screens were removed from the centers without much resistance. This included the televisions and computers. Staff became more creative in what activities the children did outside, and they spent more time doing activities outside, even despite the weather. So a lot of our centers were telling parents right up front that we will be going outside, even though it's the weather is not perfectly sunny. So we are going outside because we're seeing what advantages going outside and being more physical is bringing to the center and to the children. So scheduled physical activities. Obviously, we've now scheduled active play into the daily schedule, and so we're ensuring that it's happening every day. And if there's a special event happening and all of a sudden we've modified the schedule and taken out the physical activity, the children are usually the first ones to tell us, hey, where's our ball time? So again, this is changing how children are thinking about play, and a great example for staff on the importance of the physical activity. So there were some equipment that we had in our centers that did not follow the active play model. So those things were removed. We were trying to show staff that we didn't need expensive gym-like equipment, but that just moving and encouraging and being a good role model was sufficient. So we've removed some of those equipment and gone to showing children that physical activity can be part of your day without great big expensive equipment and without specialized equipment as well. Cake-free birthdays, certainly Ellen mentioned that we still celebrate birthdays or special occasions, but we celebrate the child's birthday and not what he's necessarily eating at that moment. So it's just we've removed a lot of icing, a lot of cakes, limiting parents bringing in cakes, and making sure that we acknowledge the child's birthday with a healthy muffin, obviously singing a song, a special hat, a picture with their parent, or something special to underline the importance of the child's day, but not always having cake with icing to notice the birthday. No food from the outside was a big change, and we're glad to get some direction on that and set some very obvious limits to that. So it just made that it was a little bit safer. We knew what food was coming in, and it included the staff as well. So instead of sitting at the table eating their own salad or eating something different, it became more family-like, sitting at the table, eating the same thing as the children, and trying to model certain behavior, trying out new foods, etc. That was really strong as well. And no juice. Some centers were already doing it, but again, uniformity was important, and sharing the reasons why we had no juice with the parents became very important. So the only beverages served are water and milk. Water is always made available, and it encourages both staff and children to drink more water. The other thing that was important was to try and limit the sippy cups for obviously infants or toddlers, and even the youngest children could be using an open cup. Again, this is working with our public health experts and our experts at the dental department as well. So what other changes did we notice? Obviously, working with public health allowed municipal childcare to make the changes that they wanted to, because they had the support, the evidence, and the face of the public health to guide and validate it. I said in the very beginning, we really couldn't have done it without their expertise. There was a willingness to change, but we didn't know how to get the information and how to get the buy-in. So they really helped us with that. Other changes include celebrations with families. We do celebrate a lot of the special events with families. Honestly, we used to have a lot of cake. We used to have a lot of desserts. And we realized that in order to be a role model, we need to follow our guidelines. We were showing parents that it was okay to have, whether it's family events or Halloween or any other special events, with the choices from the guidelines. So as soon as everybody saw the benefits, it was really quite easy to everybody to get on board. The newsletters became very important in sharing all of our great success with the parents. So we had sections called Did You Know? That were provided again by Public Health, and many pictures of how the center was following the active living or healthy eating guidelines. Again, this was a means to stimulate conversations, stimulate questions and answers for parents. Obviously, we're in some of the most needy areas, and it still surprises us to this day to see how many questions parents had and how involved they wanted to get. So we observed many instances where the child's dramatic and other play incorporates the healthy eating or active living influence. For instance, I was in a center where a child had a great big blanket and wanted some help in doing a picnic. So we put the blanket on the floor, and one child who was playing with blocks says, "We're going to have broccoli now at the picnic." And so one child was saying broccoli, another child was talking about bringing apples, and where's our cereal? So instead of saying, where's the hot dog or where's the hamburger? Do we have chips? The children were surprising me with their positive food choices, and I thought actually I was being set up or something. There was a camera watching me, but truly they were embracing the new fruits and vegetables that they were trying, and it was evident to me that staff were sharing, the colors, the shapes, the names of all these fruits and vegetables, and they were actually incorporating it in their dramatic play area as well. We also have more resources in place and continued support from Public Health when there are questions and concerns. So we know that Ellen and Helen are just an email away, and we're able to give them quick answers, give supervisors or teachers or even parents quick answers on the questions that they might have to make sure that everybody's always as informed as possible. And again, because the guidelines have worked so well, has been easy to get management support for the changes. If we wouldn't had a manager or even a general manager that was so easily accepting of the changes, then we probably wouldn't have moved forward so quickly and with such success. So it's always been, and I say that on our side as well as Public Health, I think the partnership has been successful due to the everybody's vision of seeing the positive that could come out of these new guidelines. And as Ellen mentioned, we did manage to get our dietitian for 18 months, 2 days a week in the initial pilot. Again, this added resource was really to help us identify where we need to put more effort in and answer quick questions for staff, and added resource was amazing. So the parents' involvement, again, has been quite surprising and supportive. They want to share recipes or ask for the recipes, and we're even doing contests and special events, special parent challenges, where parents bringing in a picture of how they and their child came to the daycare that day. So we've got pictures of children walking, children on the bus, children going through a park. So we've gotten the parents really involved, and they're quite excited and proud to be sharing their successes with their own families with us now. So some of the surprises, it was hard to find some, because they were surprises, but nothing out of the ordinary. I guess how quickly staff and children adapted. Everybody adapted really quickly to the new menus, and the increased physical activity, especially the staff role modeling. So that was, I was actually surprised how quickly people were interested in it. Obviously, the childcare community interest has been the biggest surprise. To see that there's 80-some people registered to listen to us ramble on about our great guidelines is quite positive. We're getting lots of phone calls, lots of interest. And for us, as long as we're duplicating the successes, you know, if everybody had 50 to 100 children and they're sharing the guidelines with them, then just think of how we're helping to increase everybody's health image. Parent knowledge and involvement, again, like I mentioned before, we did not anticipate how quickly parents would be noticing the changes that we were doing, either physical activity or the menus, and their thirst for new knowledge and questions. So we quickly had to come up with some did you knows for those parents because they kept asking for them. Again, our parent satisfaction survey, we've always asked, do they feel that the menus are healthy? But we specifically asked them if they knew that we were implementing the healthy menus and physical activity. And for comments coming from a very needy community, we were astounded to see how impressed they were and how knowledgeable they were of the guidelines and how they felt that it was important for their child to eat that well. So again, their support has been very surprising, I guess I would say. For behavioral issues, those came to light just kind of sharing information with some of our center supervisors that we had noticed that we had a decrease in behavior or challenging behaviors with some of the children. So I guess we were keeping them quite a bit busier and keeping them a little bit more active, not just outdoors, but indoors as well. We were not looking for excuses not to go out. We were really trying to get out more and get more physical with the children, and that seemed to decrease some of the behavior challenges that we were seeing in some children. Obviously, the more they're moving, the more they're outside, the more they're vigorously being active, they sleep better. So this became a quick benefit for everybody, that the children were sleeping better. Obviously, they were eating. We noticed that even the toddlers were eating more. So they were eating more. They were running more, playing. Their skills were improving, and obviously they were sleeping a little bit better. As for cost, we haven't really had a chance to evaluate a full year of doing the guidelines, but this is something that we really want to do a little bit further on. We noticed that there wasn't an increase, but we wanted to see if there might even be a decrease in food costs in purchasing more fruits and vegetables and coming away from the pre-packaged foods. But we still have to look at that piece as well. So the recipes, even though we thought that cooks would be resistant to being given recipes to follow, they've actually embraced the change, and they're looking forward to bringing new recipes to be added to the bank that we already have. So those were some great surprises that we thought we would share with you.
Okay, we're heading over to Fadi, and he's going to be talking from the kitchen point of view. Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead. All right, Fadi.
Hi, my name is Fadi. I'm a chef. I'm a trained chef. I work in restaurant setting, in five-star restaurant setting, and now working for the City of Ottawa, of course, which is make me very proud. Especially the City of Ottawa is implementing this new menu, which is give a great opportunity for the kids to eat healthy and to grow healthy, and gives us the opportunity to show our skills and what we can do with them. So looking at the birthday setting here, what I did is few examples of what we use in the daycare We do not use any cakes for the birthday there. In my daycare, we do use a lot of vegetables and fruits for birthdays, that's for sure. I do a lot of different sketches for them. I do a lot of different shapes in the fruits and vegetables, which is encourage them to eat it, and they forget about anything called cake. So for them, they're very excited just to see what's going to come up next. Um, I every fruit in the kitchen is used for something. So I use the pineapple, for example. I cut the pineapple and scoop it and fill it with fruits and make wings for it, like what we see in the picture there. And that makes them very excited just to eat it. And I produced the e-candle, which is we're not allowed to use candles in the daycare. So I brought an e-candle, so we light it for them so they know it's their birthday. So when the cake comes in, which is the fruits come in, or vegetable, we call it cake. They know it as cake, but it's a healthy cake. We turn it on so they know, it's somebody's birthday in the daycare. That's okay. And that's the model here for, actually, that was 2 days ago. Actually, it was on Friday, cooked on Friday. This is like a little example of what you use in a daycare. It's a garden of vegetables. What you see, our fridges it's like a field. So it's very exciting for me personally because I love to see that. I get power for working with vegetables and fruits and fresh herbs, and that makes me very excited by what I feed them because I know they're eating very healthy, and that's gonna give them power through the day. It's gonna bank them with a lot of energy and give them a really good day to spend at the daycare by eating so healthy like that. Because we don't use trans fat. I'm very big on olive oil, on herbs, on fresh vegetables, on seasonal stuff. I make them a lot of smoothies. They eat a lot of smoothies, fresh from blueberry. We get a lot of fresh ingredient from a supplier that we deal with. For the kids, they sometimes I know kids. I have kids, so I know it's difficult for them to accept some of the stuff. And I got my ways with them, so I understand every child in the daycare because I've been working there for a while, so I know exactly what they like and what shape they like and how it's gonna the presentation is gonna be for them. So that makes them very excited, and that makes them on the go. They're always eating, and I got no problem. And if we got a problem, I mean, always we have a solution for it in the kitchen, and that makes me excited too. Just to make them something and feed them, of course, because nobody goes home hungry. And they're well fed there, and they're very happy, and they get excited every day coming to the daycare to see what's on the menu. So they're my little customers, let's put it this way. And they don't complain. That's good, yeah.
All right, that's the end of our presentation. Thanks to Fadi and Jeanette and Ellen. So I guess we hand it over to you, Andrea.
Great, thank you so much. That was so terrific. And Fadi, I'm very hungry now. Looking at all those great pictures about food. So we have a little video that's going to play in the background with any luck. Okay, I'll let Marie-Claude sort out the technical things. And it's a couple minutes long, but it's really cute. There isn't any sound on it. So we just thought we would let it play in the background while we answer some questions. And we've got some great questions. Wondering about the youth development status, division of responsibility in your healthy eating guidelines. And a couple of slides after Glendora asked that question, you did mention division of responsibility. So I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit. Hi, Ellen? Yes.
It's a big part of the guidelines for sure.
Okay, great. Sorry, we're just having a technical difficulty. The chat box disappeared, and now it's back. So let me find the next one. Okay, so Donna was asking
statewide, but we just decided to eliminate it because of the cost, but also for cost
The next question, we're coming fast and furious here. The next question is from Carol. We have a question about modeling at mealtime. So it's great timing because here we've got a great shot of the video on screen of staff sitting down with the kids. So Carolyn's question is, staff at the center have the same meal, so they're not eating their own food from home. Do you provide them with lunch at no cost? How does this work practically?
Maybe Jeanette can answer that question because she knows the specifics about how it's handled in the municipal center. Of course, this is different in every of the centers, but in municipal they do have a standard.
So for us, the important thing was not necessarily that we were feeding all of the staff like a full meal. It was more to be a role model in trying new things. So I would say that the staff are usually using a smaller plate, I would say, and our and always good, and it's so good. So it's more as a role model than actually them, eating the meal itself. But we do ask that they sit down and try the foods that the children are eating for that reason.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm just getting distracted reading all these fantastic Linda was saying that she doesn't have as much fiber, or in some cases no fiber, it's not as filling. Donna was just asking again for but were there any other reasons that forecast actually came from?
They were asking for juice instead of water, and then not necessarily always eating everything that all of those elements put together.
About if they can be shared.
Yes, we can share that information for sure. We can be contacted and we can give that information. I think you've got our contact information, have you, Andrea, that you can share?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay,
sure.
Super. And one more question that we have, and then I have a whole bunch of questions. The question, it's around, this is a question from local childcare staff around handling allergies and intolerances from kids in your centers. Do centers provide specialty foods and meals for these children? Great question.
Yes and no. We tried to build into the menus alternatives that could be used. That there were several centers that had children with specific allergies that, of course, they needed to be fed differently. In most cases, the parents were no longer bringing special food in for that particular child. The cook did accommodate the menu so that that child was not getting the egg or not getting the milk. But all the centers are definitely all nut-free, so that was never an issue. But if there was something like fish, we have fish on the menu once a week. So on that day, if a child was allergic to fish, then obviously that child would be getting an alternative. But part of the guidelines was that the food would be made to look and smell and whatever as much as close as possible to what the other children were receiving.
Okay, great.
We are continuing to deal with it, and it's definitely been a huge factor for the cooks in each center each year with the different allergies or intolerances. And we have discussed looking at some ways to deal with that more effectively because it can become quite onerous for the cook.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. We also had a question about breakfast. If the centers provide breakfast for kids, or do parents provide that?
Well, for instance, in our parent handbook, we mentioned that we have a morning snack that we offer. Does it look like a breakfast? I would say it looks like a breakfast. It was intentional because of the clientele that we're serving. So we were, Ellen, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we were building the nutritional value for each day to represent three-quarters of their daily needs. So we were assuming that perhaps the children in our centers, maybe they had a donut hole for breakfast. So we were assuming that they weren't having the fiber or the cereal or the protein or the fruits and vegetables required. So that's why it looks quite a bit like a breakfast. We were assuming that most did not have the breakfast.
Okay, great, thanks. And a final, at least final for now question from Petra is about food procurement. Is it all centralized through Cisco for all of your centers?
All of our centers, yes, are using Cisco, and again, that's just because that's the City of Ottawa's standing offer. There are other companies such as McCartney's, but we have to be purchasing through a standing offer, so Cisco is who we've got.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so now I've got a bunch of questions. That was just so interesting. What I really love about this webinar, and I'm so glad that you're able to come and tell us all about your guideline implementation. What I really love about this is that oftentimes when we think about healthy public policy, we're really focused on the beginning stages of policy development. So we're focused on, getting community support, identifying the policy issue, identifying some potential policy options, and getting our policy passed. With your experience, you've focused an awful lot on policy implementation, which isn't always something that we think about. And I think, and I would love to have you correct me if I'm mistaken, that really once you had the guidelines passed and had the support to actually implement them, it really was about an 18-month or 2-year or so process to actually get those guidelines implemented.
It actually happened very quickly.
Yeah.
I think part of the process was the key to when we developed the guidelines. The advisory groups were essential because a lot of that discussion happened there. How are we going to implement this? How are we going to, that discussion, if we don't have any screens, is that practical? What would be the challenges? So it was really formulating the guidelines along with the supervisors, the cooks, the ECs, that it really helps. We always have that implementation in mind because every time, you developed a guideline, having that discussion, what's the practicality of it, I think really helped us a lot in moving it forward, I would say. Mm-hmm. So when it came to, therefore that would give direction to our training, that would therefore give direction to what resources we would need, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great, and it's also a really good reminder, and I think sometimes many of us kind of fall into the trap of once we get the policy implemented, we're home free, and what your example has really highlighted are all of the things that are necessary to support implementation, like all of that great staff training, like getting the parents so enthusiastic and requesting recipes and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's program development that happens, and if you have your guidelines sorted, then that seems to follow naturally out of that. Mm-hmm. And the timelines, I think, for this project have been about a year to a year and a half, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we started like 3 years ago, though, with the advisory group.
The advisory group.
But we've
yeah.
been rolled out
For at least a year.
for at least a year.
Yeah, it's about a year since it's been rolled out.
But it happened fast, too, because we had a willing partner, or we had willing partners and motivated partners, and childcare came to public health. I think we struggle in public health with wanting to do all this, and we have to seek the champions, and we have to find the people to actually implement it. But they came to us, and that really was the critical factor here. I think they really wanted it to happen, and that's why it happened.
Okay, so we've got another great question from Carolyn. What was the budget allocated for implementation and supporting resources, etc.? Great question.
We're all shaking our heads because we don't know.
Well,
we didn't know what the budget was
Yeah.
last time, I guess.
honestly, there wasn't a specific budget that we thought of. It was using the internal resources that we already had. The only additional resource was when we seconded the dietitian for 2 days a week for a period of 18 months. But basically, the consultation, the development, the research, the digging up, the piloting of the process, everything was done within our own internal budget envelopes.
Great. So a question from Petra. Are you going to try to scale this up beyond municipal child care centers?
Yes, we are for sure. We're already training the community-based childcare centres, and this is why the e-modules and all the resources that we're currently developing will be made accessible to across Ottawa. As I say, it's still voluntary, but it will be this experience, and what we've learned from this experience will shape all those strategies, the sustainability strategies, so that anyone can go online who's in childcare to access it. And we're now looking at exploring how we can provide support to home providers, looking at possibly a train-the-trainer format in that the licensed home providers have home advisors that work with them. So maybe that is something that we'll be developing next year.
Fantastic. So just kind of building on that, we have a question from Erica about if you can share some of the activities that you're using in daycare centers to promote physical literacy.
We kept it very practical and simple, and really we actually got tape out to teach physical literacy, and literally having the teachers work on mapping out active play zones so that you could get children to do physical literacy skills. It's hard to describe, but we would mark out with painter's tape an activity. So if it was something where we would get them jumping from line to line or following a maze, that we'd get them to do different skills on that piece of tape. It's quite amazing what you can do with a piece of tape. The children would have to learn to balance on one foot, they would have to stop. It was gradually building on that fundamental movement skill. So we used very simple portable play equipment as well. So what they already had in the centers, so bean bags, hula hoops, and all those kind of things, poo noodles. So it's very basic movements with toddlers and preschoolers that you were doing that. So what was great about the physical literacy training from the National Coaches Association was that Kelly was able to break down the movements that children should be doing at that stage. And those champions would then be in the centers to teach on an ongoing basis to all the different teachers in each center. So we really sort of focused in on very simple skills with this age group.
We didn't
Right.
end up doing activity cards.
Oh, we can't really hear you.
I was going to say we didn't really come up with like a bank of activities. Just by showing the basic movements and what was required, actually staff just went on a crazy rampage and developed a bunch of activities and games. And so we haven't compiled all of that in a type of bank of activities or anything.
We're, Ottawa Public Health, that's one of the sustainable pieces that we're working with Reebok. Reebok has a program on physical activity for school-age children. So we're now, for the nutrition side and for the physical activity, we're developing what we call box bursts and box bites. And what these will be sort of curriculum-based activities that they can do with the children in the classroom. And that will be talking about their fundamental movement skills that they'll be learning, running, balancing, and this activity will teach them these certain skills, along with what other growth and development skills they'll be doing. So those kind of things are in the works because, yeah, teachers wanted more ideas for sure. Hopefully I've answered that question.
Great. And speaking of ideas and training, Karen is wondering if you have any thoughts about training staff outside of Ottawa so that other agencies can provide train the trainer in their areas.
We have again when we eventually launch the modules, those would be available. We're hoping to. I'm technically challenged, but apparently we will locate the links to these e-modules in various places so people can access it and go online and do the training that way. We haven't really explored it in going into other municipalities to do training at this stage. So we haven't really talked about that. We've been so focused on trying to get some of these sustainable pieces in place at this stage.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Oh, we've got one more question from Fiona, and then we're going to move on. Does the YMCA do catch in Ottawa, and would that be a potential way to have pre-made resources for childcare centers to have physical activities?
I'm afraid I'm not aware if they do or they don't at this stage. I know they do a lot of work. The YMCA do a lot of work in this area. Too sure about Ottawa.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again to our four speakers, as well as to all of you for coming. It's been really interesting, and just to let you know that I'm going to be writing up a blog post for our blog at hclinkontario.ca, and that will be posted tomorrow along with the links to the YouTube video and the slides in English and French that our wonderful presenters used today. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what HC-Link is doing to support the development of healthy public policy. And one of the things that we have is an online policy learning community where folks can get together and learn more about policy development, ask questions. We've got two think tank special group areas, one on active transportation and one on community food security. We also have a whole variety of resources on our website, hclinkontario.ca, as well as the French version of our website. And we also have staff that can support you in your policy efforts through our consultation service, through the resources and learning communities that I mentioned, through our tailored workshops, and all of the recordings from the first three, actually two of the three. One of our policy development webinars, we had such terrible audio we weren't able to record it, but we do have recordings and resources from the other webinars in that series as well. So thank you again to our speakers, to all of you for coming. You will be getting an email with some links to resources, etc. And once we close the webinar, you'll be directed to a short online survey to give us your feedback on the webinar.